Alrighty, so this is investigation 15, experimenting with the saturation point. So we have several different experimental conditions. We're going to do a stir, shake, cool, and heat. We're going to be mixing sugar into each of these test tubes with those 4 different conditions of stir, shake, cool, and heat. And then we'll have one control where we won't be doing anything. Your group would have been assigned one of these conditions, so just watch and pick one and record the data for one of them. First, we're going to have to mass the jar of sugar so we know how many grams we're starting with, so we know how much that we add. It looks like we're at about 37 grams. So we're starting with 37 grams of sugar, and our first experiment is going to be stir. So I'm going to take a little scoop of sugar and carefully pour in. Try not to spill anything, otherwise so I know how much I'm actually adding. I'm going to just stir it. What I'm looking for is when I reach the saturation point. And we know we've reached the saturation point when it stops dissolving. So if I can stir this enough to where it will dissolve, then I can add more. But if there's still some crystals at the bottom, I know my solution is saturated. So I still see some crystals, so I'm going to keep stirring. And I'm going to pause this and see how much I can add. Okay, so we're back, and it looks like I've gotten it saturated. There are a few crystals down at the bottom. It's hard to see on the camera, but they won't dissolve, so I know my solution is saturated. So now what I need to do is take the temperature. It's part of your data that you need to record, so I'll let that sit. And we need to mass our sugar jar again so we know how much sugar was added. And what we're looking for is the amount of grams that was added, not the amount of scoops. So using grams is always more precise than saying how many scoops, because they added it in little scoops, but we're more concerned about the mass. And it looks like we're at 35.7. So you started at 37 grams and ended at 35.7. So that goes in this table, which you should have. And then you can do the difference and figure out how much sugar was added. And the last piece of data you would need is the temperature. And it looks like right about 20 degrees Celsius. So that's the last bit of data you need for that one. Alrighty. Meanwhile, here's our control. I'm going to add a little sugar to that guy. And with a control, you're not going to do anything to it, because you're just seeing if anything happens when you just leave it alone. So we know what our experiment is doing to our test tubes. Because I can't shake it and I can't stir it, it doesn't look like anything's going to happen. So that one is already saturated. So let's see how much that one lost. So the control started at 35.7, because I just added it from the jar that I just measured. And let's see how much I added in to make it saturated. Not very much. It's like 35.5. So only 0.2 grams. So my control is here. You got your experiment and your control. Your control started at 35.7 and went down to 35.5. So now you have the data for that. And I'll go ahead and take the temperature of this one, see if it was any different than our experiment. And it looks like it's about 20 degrees Celsius as well. So not much difference in temperature there, not any difference. Alrighty, so that was our stir. We'll move on to shake. And I'll pause while I get that set up. Alrighty, so now we are going to do the shake experiment. So I've got a fresh test tube of water. I'm going to mask my jar of sugar to see where we're starting. And it looks like it's right about 35.5. So we're at 35.5 grams of sugar in our experiment. And I'm going to go ahead and add it, and then I'll shake it and see how much it takes to get to saturation point. So there's our first little bit. Go ahead and put the stopper on and shake it here. This might take a minute. Alrighty. So actually I'm going to pause this and I will finish getting it to saturation point, and then we'll come back and measure. Okay, so it looks like we've reached saturation point. You can see maybe that find the camera there, that there's quite a bit of crystals at the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and mask our sugar jar. We started at 35.5, and let's see how much it's gone down by. Okay, so it looks like it's at like 32.3 grams. So you can do the subtraction and figure out how much you added. And last thing we're going to do is take the temperature and see if it was different than our control. And our control we did a couple times ago. Looks like it's higher. So our control was at 20 degrees. And this one is at about 25 degrees Celsius. So about 5 degrees warmer in our experiment than in our control. Alrighty, and that is the shake experiment.